Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are really grabbing that shovel. We're digging deep into Friedrich Nietzsche's, let's say, intensely controversial work, Beyond Good and Evil, BGE, as it's often called.
Yeah, and this isn't just philosophy as usual. It's radical.
And
it's challenging.
Incendiary, even.
Mhm.
It's this attempt to reevaluate pretty much everything we assume about morality, truth, religion,
Yeah.
the whole lot.
Absolutely. And for anyone listening who wants, a real handle on Nietzsche's biggest ideas, the ones that really shook things up and are still debated today, this is the dive for you.
So our mission today.
Well, we want to unpack the key concepts, look at the man himself, his life gives us so much context, and really lay out this radical rethinking of morality he proposes in BGE. It's like a shortcut to understanding his core arguments, but buckle up. It's not always an easy ride.
Definitely not. And we really have to start with Nietzsche himself, because his life is just this massive paradox when you set it against his philosophy.
It really is. Born in 1844, right? And his
Yeah.
family background is just steeped in generations of, pious Christian belief.
Exactly. Two long lines of Protestant pastors, I believe. The very faith he later becomes, arguably, its most devastating critic.
It's quite the starting point. And the other paradox, the one that always gets me, is when he wrote this stuff, BGE, thus spake Zarathustra, notes for the will to power, this incredibly productive period.
Yeah, like 8 years, right? Started around 1885 with BGE.
And during that time, he was suffering immensely, physically. Constant illness, migraines, apparently using pretty strong stuff like chloral just to sleep. It was a period of restlessness and pain.
So you've got this image, right? A man in almost constant physical agony. And yet he's producing these works that attack the foundations of Western thought with, well, incredible sharpness.
And that's the key thing the sources emphasize. Biographers push back hard against the idea that his illness somehow invalidates the work or that he was already losing his mind.
They insist his books were, and I'm quoting here, thought out in the most clarified way, scrupulously sane.
Which is crucial. It means we have to engage with the ideas themselves. We can't just dismiss them as, the product of illness. It also puts a different spin on his later ideas about suffering, doesn't it?
The discipline of suffering. Yeah, we'll
Right.
definitely come back to that. Okay, so let's dive into the philosophy itself. Chapter 1 of BGE, Prejudices of Philosophers. He doesn't exactly ease into it.
No, he comes out swinging.
Yeah.
Right away, he's targeting dogmatism, the whole idea of absolute truth with a capital T.
But he starts with that
Yes.
famous analogy, truth is a woman.
Yeah, it's provocative. He says, basically, suppose truth is a woman. Well, then all these dogmatic philosophers have been utterly clueless about how to woo her. They've used terrible seriousness and clumsy importunity, trying to force her, essentially.
Instead of, understanding her, seducing her.
Something like that.
Yeah.
He's suggesting a different relationship to truth is needed, and he thinks their fundamental error, their clumsiness, comes from what he calls the belief in antitheses of values.
Okay, break that down. Antitheses of values, like good versus evil, truth versus error.
Exactly. Philosophers just assume these are fundamental opposites. And they also assume that the good stuff, truth, generosity, selflessness, must come from some pure original source, like the lap of being or Kant's thing in itself.
Somewhere separate from, from this world.
Right. Separate from the messy, transitory, seductive, illusory world we actually live in. Nietzsche says, hold on, maybe high-value things can arise from their opposites. Maybe truth originates in error or wisdom in foolishness, this basic assumption of metaphysics. He says it's just a prejudice.
So if philosophy isn't about finding this pure, objective truth, what is it about for Nietzsche?
Now we get to the core, the will to power. He argues that all thinking, even the most seemingly objective philosophical reasoning, is driven underneath by instincts.
Instincts, not logic.
The instincts are primary, and they're not aiming for truth in the abstract. They're aiming to preserve a certain way of life, to assert their power, to grow, to dominate.
So philosophy becomes, what, a kind of mask?
In a way, he calls it the confession of its originator, an involuntary autobiography. The moral or immoral purpose driving the philosopher, that's the true vital germ from which the whole system grows. The reasoning justifies the instinct, not the other way around.
Okay, this is where it gets really challenging. Because if instinct and power are the drivers, he makes that leap. The falseness of an opinion is not any objection to it. How does that work? That feels fundamentally wrong.
It feels wrong if you assume truth is the highest value. But for Nietzsche, life, vitality, power, those are the highest values.
Yeah.
So if a false belief, an illusion, an error actually helps a person or a species live, thrive, assert its power.
And it's better. than a debilitating truth.
Functionally, yes, it has higher life value. And to recognize this, to understand that untruth might be a condition of life, that's the moment you step outside the old moral framework, that's moving beyond good and evil.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And he doesn't stop there. He also re-examines the concept of the will itself. He thought others, especially Schopenhauer, got it totally wrong.
He really did. He tackles that feeling we have of free will, making a conscious choice.
What does he say it really is?
He describes it as a complex state of delight. It's the pleasure the person feels who gives a command and simultaneously identifies themselves with the one carrying it out.
So it's not real freedom, just a feeling associated with an action unfolding. Can you give an example?
Think about deciding to lift your arm. You feel free in that moment of decision. Nietzsche says that feeling is the pleasure of commanding, arm, lift, and also identifying with the muscles, nerves, everything executing the order. The will isn't just the command, it's the whole complex mechanism in action. The feeling of freedom is just a gloss on top.
An illusion of control, then.
Pretty much. And interestingly, he also rejects the opposite, the idea of unfree will, deterministic cause and effect controlling everything.
Wait, so it's not free will or unfree will?
He thinks both concepts misuse cause and effect. He argues cause and effect are just useful fictions, labels we use for designation, for convenience. They don't actually explain the underlying reality.
So what is the underlying reality, according to him? Does he offer an alternative?
He hazards a hypothesis, a big one. What if, wherever we see effects happening, it's actually will operating on will?
Will operating on will, even in, say, physics,
Yeah.
like billiard balls hitting each other.
That's the radical suggestion, that maybe all mechanical action, all physical force, is just a manifestation of will, maybe a very primitive, undifferentiated form of the will to power. It's his attempt to find a single unifying principle for everything.
Okay, so if the will to power is the driver and traditional truth and morality are sidelined, who gets to decide which untruths are valuable? This seems like it would inevitably create different kinds of people.
Absolutely. And that leads us straight into the next major part of BGE. If you manage to break free from these old dogmas, if you see truth and untruth differently, you become what he calls a free spirit.
The free spirit, that's the philosopher of the future.
Sort of. It's the thinking person, the intellectual aristocrat, as he sometimes puts it. This free spirit, described in Chapter 2, is like a bridge, a necessary step for humanity to overcome its current limitations. It's this potential that underpins his famous distinction between two fundamental types of morality.
Master morality and slave morality. This feels like the absolute cornerstone of the book.
It really is. Let's start with master morality. This belongs to the dominant types, the strong, the noble, the rulers.
How does it work? What do they value?
It's instinctive. It arises from self-affirmation. Good is defined by them. It's what pertains to them: strength, power, health, difficulty, maybe even things we'd consider harsh, like egotism, arrogance, even a certain kind of cruelty or appropriation.
And duties, responsibilities.
Crucially, they only owe duties to their equals, people of the same rank. Those below them, they're seen almost as means, as tools, or simply irrelevant to their moral considerations.
Okay, so that's the masters. What about the other side?
Yeah.
Slave morality.
This arises from the oppressed, the weak, the subjugated, the serving classes. It's not born from strength, but from, well, resentment and the need to survive.
So their values are reactive.
Exactly. Since they suffer under the masters, they value things that ameliorate suffering, things that make life bearable for the herd. Think sympathy, kindness, patience, humility, friendliness. Utility is key.
And good and evil get flipped.
Completely. For the slave morality, the good man is the safe man, the harmless man, the one who evokes pity, perhaps. The evil man, conversely, is the master, the one who inspires fear, the strong one, the dangerous one.
It's a total inversion of the master's values. Now, where does religion fit into this? Because his take on it is, well, pretty explosive.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and as you say, politically charged today. He argues that religion, specifically the kind of Judeo-Christian religion dominant in Europe, is actually a positive necessity for maintaining the slave morality.
And necessity, not something to be overthrown for everyone.
No, not for everyone. His goal wasn't to destroy the faith of the masses. He wanted to free the strong individuals, the potential masters, the free spirits from its constraints, but for the herd.
He thought it was useful.
Vital, even. It provides the rules, the comfort, the justification for their values.
Sure.
He actually goes so far as to suggest rulers should actively use religion to keep the serving classes in line, an instrument of government.
That's quite a statement. And he connects this to cruelty as well, doesn't he? This ladder of religious cruelty.
He does. He traces this evolution. Round one, the most primitive, sacrificing other humans. Think of firstborn sacrifices in ancient cultures.
Okay. What's round two?
That's sacrificing one's own strongest instincts, your nature. This is asceticism, self-denial, the kind of anti-natural morality that celebrates chastity, poverty, humility, fighting against your own innate drives.
And the third round's the final step on this ladder.
This is the most paradoxical and maybe the most profound for him. It's the sacrifice of God himself.
Sacrificing God.
Through centuries of relentless moral interpretation, culminating in atheism or agnosticism. But this doesn't lead to freedom, in his view. It leads to the ultimate act of cruelty against oneself, culminating in the worship of, well, nothingness, a void. A final self-immolation of the spirit, which he thinks is a destiny reserved for the modern generation.
Wow. That really puts a dark spin on Enlightenment thinking. Which brings us to his critique of his own time, right? Modern Europe. He wasn't impressed.
Not at all. He launches this scathing attack on modern ideas, especially things like English utilitarianism, Bentham, Mill, and the whole democratic movement.
Yeah, what's his beef with democracy and the greatest good for the greatest number?
He sees it all as promoting what he calls the universal green meadow happiness of the herd. It prioritizes security, comfort, safety, ease, the elimination of suffering.
And that's bad because?
Because, for Nietzsche, it leads to mediocrity. He argues that the pursuit of general welfare is actively harmful to the development of higher men. It levels everyone down.
So democracy isn't progress in his eyes.
It's the opposite. It's a degenerating force, leading to the mediocrizing and depreciation of humanity, turning us into an absolutely gregarious animal, just part of the flock.
And this connects back to suffering. He actively defends suffering.
He does. He states bluntly, the discipline of suffering, of great suffering, has produced all the elevations of humanity hitherto. All greatness comes from overcoming hardship.
I think most people can grasp that effort leads to achievement, but he takes it further, resisting sympathy itself. Why?
He calls sympathy the worst of all pampering and enervation. It weakens us, stops us from facing necessary struggles. It keeps the herd comfortable, but prevents the emergence of anything truly exceptional.
And this idea connects to his concept of spiritualized cruelty. That sounds like a total contradiction.
It does, but think about it this way. For Nietzsche, higher culture isn't about being nice. He says almost everything that we call higher culture is based upon the spiritualizing and intensifying of cruelty.
How can cruelty be spiritualized?
It's the cruelty the seeker of knowledge inflicts upon their own spirit. It's forcing your mind to confront uncomfortable truths, to say no to comforting illusions, to maintain intellectual honesty even when it's painful. It's the artist forcing form onto chaotic material. It's the philosopher forcing their mind against its own inclinations for the sake of understanding. That's the spiritualized cruelty that drives intellectual progress.
That's a demanding view of intellectual life.
Right.
Okay, we also can't avoid his views on women, which are notoriously provocative.
Yes, and often read out of context, though even in context they're harsh. He frames them within this larger critique of modern decline, the rise of the herd man.
So he connects feminism or women's emancipation to this decline.
He does. He sees the push for equal rights as a symptom of decay, a disintegration of womanly instincts, even a defeminizing.
What specifically does he criticize?
He suggests that when women unlearn to fear, they lose something essentially feminine, maybe related to modesty or taste. He even points to the rise of women in the workforce, women as clerkes, as a sign of regression, of women losing their unique nature in the face of the industrial spirit.
He seems to want a strong polarity between the sexes.
Very much so. He felt modern society, by trying to make men and women too similar and by putting immense pressure on romantic love, was actually damaging the potential for profound relationships and cultural vitality.
All right, so we've seen the critique of philosophy, morality, modernity. What's the way forward? What is the role of this new philosopher, the free spirit?
Their role is crucial but dangerous. They need to be tempters, critics, willing to undertake these painful experiments on themselves and on the values of society. They need the strength, the will to power to overcome the herd instinct that he saw dominating Europe.
And the really surprising twist at the end, his view on what democracy ultimately leads to.
Yeah, it's a stunning paradox. He argues that the very democratization he despises, this leveling process, is actually an involuntary arrangement for the rearing of tyrants.
Tyrants, like political dictators.
Not necessarily, or at least not only. He means tyrants in a spiritual sense, too. The idea is that the widespread mediocrity creates a kind of contrast, a backdrop against which the truly strong, exceptional individual can define themselves more sharply. They become stronger because the herd is so vast and uniform. They learn more skills of disguise and self-mastery in navigating it.
The herd inadvertently breeds its opposite.
That's the idea. The exceptional individual becomes more exceptional in resistance to the norm.
So let's bring this home for the listener. We've gone through Beyond Good and Evil, this attempt to look at humanity with fearless Oedipus eyes, hardened by science, trying to translate man back again into nature, stripping away comforting interpretations. It's a tough path.
Extremely tough. And it leads to that final, unsettling question he poses. Why do it? Why undertake this painful task of seeking knowledge, of practicing this intellectual cruelty on ourselves?
He admits he couldn't find a truly satisfying answer, right? Just the question, why knowledge at all?
Exactly. And that's the challenge he leaves you with. If this pursuit doesn't guarantee happiness or final truth or comfort, if it primarily offers difficulty, danger, and forces you beyond simple notions of good and evil, is that struggle itself the only justification? Is the inherent risk, the difficulty, the very thing that gives life value?
That's certainly a thought to wrestle with long after this dive is over.